My name is Ryan Peet. I'm with a company called Cavuto Solutions, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. Welcome to Boston, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the keynote. I'd like to try and keep this fairly informal, so if you have any questions at any time, just let me know. Kind of do it like a seminar, but I'm here to talk to you today about Microsoft Student Advantage program, the role Cavuto plays in that. I'm with a company called Cavuto, Microsoft partner, and what we did for the University of Oxford, sort of a unique deployment for them. With regards to that program. Before I get started, who here has heard of Microsoft Student Advantage program? Anybody? Excellent, quite a few. And has anybody implemented it on campus already? One, okay. Yeah, excellent, good. Yeah, it's crunch time now if you're just getting it ready for back to school for sure. So we're here to talk about sort of an alternative way of deploying this if you're not ready to do a full-blown Office 365 solution yet, and that's what Oxford's problem was. So before I kind of get into that, I'll tell you a little bit about us. We've been a partner in education for 15 years. We've been founded in 1997 by a software license manager at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia, Canada. We're a Canadian company ourselves. We're about 80 people based out of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And we sort of started this company with a fairly simple philosophy, and that's that if we can make the student better off, if we can make the school better off, and if we can make our software publisher partner better off, we've got a right to make a living. So what we've done is develop this technology that allows us to manage and deliver essentially education programs for major software publishers like Microsoft, Adobe, and VMware, just to name a few. So our biggest partner is Microsoft, and if you've heard of us already, who's heard of Cavuto already? I know, okay, quite a few of you, that's great. So we're pretty much in every campus in the world, whether it's a department that's doing a Microsoft DreamSpark program through STEM, through the VMware programs, or through these multitude of Microsoft volume license agreements that exist. And we've really worked with Microsoft to pioneer these types of programs so that we can add value to those agreements and help students and staff at those schools. So our status with Microsoft is, they call us a digital distribution service provider. We're not a reseller in any way. We work with your various resellers. We don't care who they are. It doesn't matter if you're with CDW, Dell, SHI, whomever. They all work with us to help basically take that volume license agreement that you've purchased and help with the distribution out to all of your different stakeholders. And we've done that by developing this platform that we call ELMS, stands for Electronic License Management System. And really what it is an end-to-end software distribution system and license management system that will take a user through a workflow to get them their entitlements. So what does that mean? That means a student would go to this school-branded site, they would authenticate, whether that's through Shibboleth, or through some type of integration with your LDAP or Active Directory, some type of email domain verification or user upload. Maybe if it's K-12, it's a registration code. But what we do is we take that student, we show them everything that they're eligible for, and they can actually acquire what they're eligible for through it. So it's kind of like providing a retail experience to a volume license world. And we do this for about 24,000 schools and 30 million licenses a year across these programs. But I'm here less to talk about us and more to talk about what Microsoft's doing with Office 365 and the changes that they're making. So when, did anyone attend EDUCAUSE when Microsoft made this announcement last year? Does anyone go to that conference? No. So last year at EDUCAUSE, they actually announced that they were going to add Office 365 Pro Plus as a SKU to their Office 365 for Education offering. And this is really, their Google compete. They're going head-to-head with Google Apps, and before, just like Google Apps, it was a set of tools in the cloud. And Microsoft said, okay, we need to make this better if we're going to really compete, and they decided to make the desktop apps available for free to students as well. So we all know what Office 365 is in terms of what it provides, but the Student Advantage program itself is really about getting those desktop apps, and whether it's really a desktop like a PC or a laptop, but also iPad or any other mobile device, where there's really a paid Office available for free to those students. So the SKU that they actually get is called Office 365 Pro Plus, and it's a benefit of basically licensing all of your staff and faculty through a volume license agreement, whether that's an OVS-ES agreement, which would be for schools with less than 1,000 FTEs generally, or whether that's EES agreement, which is any school that has more than 1,000 FTE. The general rule of thumb, if you've licensed all of your desktop machines or all of your faculty and staff for Office, all of your students can get this for free. Huge benefit. So the software itself can, just like the retail software that you buy for, $30 a month or $500 outright at Best Buy, it can be installed on up to 5 PCs and Macs, as well as another 5 mobile devices. And it can be deployed completely separate from Microsoft's other services. And this is where there's generally a difference in how Microsoft presents this from how other schools and other partners present this. Because in practice, you can actually take this offer, and if you're already a Google school and you're not ready to change, or maybe you are doing, you're not ready to do online email management or SharePoint deployments in the cloud and all of that kind of stuff, but you still are eligible to make this available to your students, there's a way to do that without actually going down the road of paying a consultant thousands and thousands of dollars to get you set up for Office 365. But you still get everything. It's still a product that's licensed out of what Microsoft calls a tenant, the tenant being the school's sort of private area of the Microsoft cloud. And this is where the users would reside. This is where licenses get assigned, and where a user would go to click that download button. And I'll show you that in a demo of what we've done for Oxford. You can still use it across all of your devices, still uploads everything into SkyDrive if that's what they'd like. And it's always the latest version of Office. And now, even though it's running locally on your machine and you can use it offline, there's still the click-to-run experience, which means as soon as you click that button, you're up and running using those desktop apps in a few minutes. So when Microsoft presents the traditional Office 365 deployment, and they try to make it sound simple with words like fast track, and for some schools it can be, there's really a lot that actually has to go into it in the back end. And based on my question earlier, where everybody knows about Student Advantage, but very few have actually deployed that, I gather the sense is that it was probably harder than it was initially presented. And if that's not true, I'd love to hear different experiences. But when Microsoft talks about a deployment, they want you to actually plan a project. They want you to set up a bunch of different infrastructure, whether that's a simple directory synchronization to your Active Directory or some other type of method to get all of the users into the system. Then they need you to figure out a way to provision all of those users for the different license entitlements. You can write PowerShell scripts or write into their APIs, but there's some coding generally that would have to be done. And then there's actually managing that user after they've been provisioned for that software. They're probably going to bring in a cell phone, an iPad, a laptop. Who supports that person now that they're on campus using these Office products? Microsoft doesn't. So a lot of these schools, they look at this and they don't have the resources necessarily to support 30,000 students that are coming for this entitlement. And then there's a bunch of people, if they are going to support them, that would need to be trained and maintained in the Microsoft systems for this to really work. So really it's about identity management, license provisioning, and ongoing support. So we recognized that the traditional method isn't for everybody. This is where we've come in, and what I'll show you with Oxford in just a second. We've developed a way to essentially do that entirely automatically so that the user essentially self-serves into the system. There's absolutely no integration from a identity management perspective. There's nothing that you have to do on a provisioning side, and there's no ongoing support that's required. So while I just set up the demo really quick, does anybody have any questions about that? No? So what we're going to look at is a live site that's set up for the University of Oxford, and they came to us with a pretty specific problem. They're a member of the UK Access Federation, which is a shibboleth organization, just like here it's in Common, or in Canada it's the Canadian Access Federation. There was no real easy tie-in for a shibboleth into Office 365, like there is for, say, a school using Active Directory and something called directory synchronization, a tool that Microsoft gives you as part of this. So they really wanted us to authenticate students using shibboleth and still get them provisioned for Student Advantage. That was the challenge. So what you're going to see just really quickly here is our back end of what we call ELMS. So because they're shibboleth, I sort of have to bypass their authentication process to sign in as a test user. But we are actually going to use their live site, and we're actually going to provision this person for a real license. And since they're in the UK and we're in Boston, I have to pretend that I'm coming from the United Kingdom. So this system that we've built has all sorts of policy enforcement mechanisms that can be built in, things like quantity restrictions. If you buy this, you can't get that, or you have to have gotten this before you can get that. A student can get it, but a staff member can't, or a grad student can get it, but a regular student can't, and all of those types of things are managed automatically within this platform. And it can be used for anything. All right, here's an example of the IT Services web store at the University of Oxford. This one is very, very simple. All that we have with them is this Student Advantage offering. Students don't care. I shouldn't say that, there's Adobe as well. In the Microsoft case, it's just Student Advantage. The student doesn't care that it's Student Advantage. They care what's getting put on their computer. So we present this as Office 365 Pro Plus. They click that offering, and we show them what it is, and we tell them the rules around it. So if we look down, there's short description of what's included, and really it's full versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, and so on. Any system requirements that are required, and then an eligibility tab. So what we've done with this offering is we've said you have to be a student, obviously, per Microsoft's rules, and we've set it up as a subscription. So we're going to give them 12 months of access. Because the rule says that you have to be an active student to maintain access to Office 365 Pro Plus through Student Advantage, we've said that we're going to give them access for 12 months after we verified them. And after 12 months, we're going to make them come back and re-verify, essentially just sign in again so that we get another active credential. We see they're still a valid student. And we're going to give them another 12 months at that point. So that's how we've handled the graduation scenario. And if you're not comfortable with 12 months, Microsoft is, by the way, but if you're not comfortable with 12 months, you can set that time frame to be whatever you'd like. Okay, so we're just going to add this to our cart. If you had other products here, whether they were free or paid, vast majority of the items that we're distributing through this platform are free. They could also be here for an integrated experience. At this point, we just present them with the rules of the program, and we actually have a digital signature that we ask them to go through. And this is auditable and stored in their account. So if the user later is determined to be doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, you can always refer back to this. And with other Microsoft programs, it's really a transfer of liability. So with, say, Work at Home or Student Option or DreamSpark, it transfers the liability from the school to the student. And they're actually Microsoft product use rights that would be displayed here. So the way that we've got this set up right now is we're actually going in and we're creating a user for that person within Oxford's tenant. And they're going to get assigned a username and a password if that user is already in the tenant. If the user is already in the tenant, we're going to show them their entitlement. But in this case, it's a brand new user. And we're going to complete that order. And we're actually working on functionality right now that will be ready in the fall, that rather than creating a new user where we display credentials to the person, they'll just seamlessly go into the tenant. We'll use the ELMS credentials to pass them through into the tenant. So what we're doing on the back end when you've got that activating subscription sort of spinny wheel, and this takes generally 15 to 20 seconds, although whenever I do a demo, it takes longer. There we go. What it's doing is actually going into that tenant, creating that user, and provisioning that user for the license. So in this case, we can see my username. And again, this is sort of almost to the point where it's obsolete because we will be passing people right in. But right now, they have to sign in with that, that temporary password. So they're now coming into Office 365, right? I take that user account that was just created for me, rpdemo3@ox.ac.uk, to put in my password, which in this case is Alpha. And since it's my first time signing in, it's going to make me create a password, and this allows you to not have to remember that horrible password that it just generated for me. So this is just done once. Next time the student signs in, they would use this new credential. And we sign in, and we instantly see the entitlement. So the resolution isn't great, but this is normally displayed all above the fold, and the student instantly sees what they're eligible for. And when they click that install button, it's going to launch the click to run experience. And they can do this again on up to 5 computers. If they click on phone or tablet, there are instructions on how to activate Office on all of these different mobile devices as well. I mean, the iPad method is generally you go to the iStore, or the iTunes Store, and you download the free app, and then you sign in with these Office 365 credentials that we've just created for you, and that will activate Office on your iPad. You can do that on your iPhone, you can do that on your Android devices, any other devices. So I already have Office installed on this computer, so we'll see if it likes that. Oh, and by the way, it defaults to a 32-bit version, but it does that for support reasons, but if the user really wants the 64-bit, it is available. And now we just go into the click to run experience. So, and it doesn't like the fact that I already have Office on my machine. Normally this would just say we're getting things ready for you if you've ever seen this experience before, and within a couple of minutes you could be typing in Word. So with this too, you still get access to all of these other services, and you still have access to the online services. So if you're at any point where you really need to be editing in the cloud, you can still do all of that. If you have no internet connection, you can still use it as well. And the way that it sort of works is it gives you 31 days worth of provisioned access, offline access. And it tries every day to ping the servers. If you don't have an internet connection for 31 days, it will go into something that Microsoft calls reduced functionality mode, which is basically edit writes. It's not going to delete anything. It's not, read-only writes. It's going to take away your edit writes. But it's not going to delete anything. You'll still have access to all your files. And the moment that your subscription is active again, everything will just pop back to life. So other than that, that's really the system. We've tried to make it like a 1, 2, 3 kind of process for those students. To get us set up for doing this, it takes less than 2 business days. The process is generally that you go to your reseller. The reseller processes this $0 SKU for you, the Student Advantage SKU. So you just tell them basically how many students that you've got. They process this order. Within a couple of days, Microsoft will send you an email. If you already have a tenant, you just sign into that existing tenant, and those licenses will become available within that tenant. If you don't already have a tenant, it's going to take you through the process to just quickly get one deployed. At which point we come in, if you've decided to use our service, and we request access to that tenant from you. You grant us access, which allows our APIs to work into your tenant. Simultaneously, we're doing the setup in the background, brand your web store, figure out how we're going to authenticate your users however you'd like. By far the easiest way is if you're a member of the InCommon Federation. Email domain is pretty simple too if you don't want to do anything with your directories. And you're up and running. And from there, it's really a marketing problem. Now, how do you tell all 25,000 students that this is an entitlement available to them? Don't go to the bookstore and buy Office 365 University for $80 that Microsoft will continue to sell. Don't go to Best Buy and buy Office Home and Student, which they still call Home and Student, for $130. Microsoft has a big problem here in the sense that they have this great thing they made available. They already have 150 million students entitled for this thing, but no one knows about it. So, yeah. I totally agree, yeah. And I think Microsoft's starting to realize that they've made it, by going the individual tenant model, like this portion of the requirement of the school each having their own tenant and their own portion of this cloud, they've made it extremely difficult to bring this out, particularly because schools aren't instantly going to switch, especially if they're doing some other thing. If it's an on-premises especially, but a lot of them are happy with the Google infrastructure that they've got. Now, of course, Microsoft's goal would be to move you over, but they haven't structured this program in such a way where that's a requirement. Right? So what are some people's reasons as to why they've heard about the program, but they haven't gone into it yet? Yeah?
You said that every 12 months students required to sign in again just to validate
Yep.
everything. What if they keep their .edu address after graduation along that stuff?
Yeah, excellent question. So we have to work that out with the school. There's sort of two ways to handle it. Ideally, they're appended to as an alumni.student or school.edu, at which point we automatically exclude. If they don't do that, it'd be best to choose a different verification method. But we have 6 or 7 different ways to do this without integration. So we can explore different options if that's the case. And it's the same thing, like some schools are uncomfortable with the fact that it's 12 months, even though a student could get it a month before graduating. Microsoft is aware of that and okay with it, but we do have ways for you to limit that if it's a concern for you. So it's really about reducing the risk. You're not removing it entirely. So, yeah. You have something? No? Okay. So just go back to the presentation really quick here. So how does this work on our side? Generally, when we work with publishers, there's no cost to the school and there's no cost to the student. That's what our goal is when we go to market with these things. In the case of the student option program, for example, Microsoft pays us to do the delivery. In the case of the DreamSpark program, Microsoft pays us to do the delivery, and it's all included. In the case of the Adobe ETLA program, Adobe pays us to do the delivery. In the case of VMware, there's like a subscription fee that you pay for the program, but our services are included in that subscription fee, and you're paying that to VMware. In this case, Microsoft hasn't yet essentially included our service as something they're willing to pay us for, even though we think that we could really help them get users if they were to do so. So to go to market and make sure that we had a solution ready for December 1st, we sort of created 2 models. A model where we keep the product free to the student, and the school pays us a fee essentially to manage this for them. Or a model where if the school can't absorb that cost or there's no budget, that the student actually pays a modest fee for the transaction essentially, the actual provisioning, and the school doesn't pay anything. In the first case, we've based it based on school size, which is dependent on your the number of staff and faculty that you have licensed under that EES agreement in the first place. So it aligns to that volume license agreement that makes you eligible for the program. And they're pretty modest fees. If you take those FTE counts and times them by 10, that's probably pretty close to your student counts. So in the large organization case where we say it's 1,000 to 3,500 FTE, that's really 10,000 to 35,000 students that you're covering for $7,500 a year. If you're a smaller school where you've got 100 to 1,000 FTE licensed, then it's $5,000 a year. If that's a problem, we can help you cost recover, or we can go into this other model where essentially it's just a flat fee. More risk to us, obviously, because there's no minimum based on transactions. We'll still do everything. But the student, rather than being presented with that free, which we saw in the demo, would be asked to be paid paying $9.95. The moment Microsoft changes that model, should they choose to do so, we would switch you over. So As I said at the beginning, it's really our goal to ensure that everybody's better off in all of this. If you've worked with Cavuto in the past, you'll know that it's very, very rare that we have a direct, let's say, a financial relationship with the school. That's generally not how we've worked. Right now, that's how we've presented this program, simply because the publisher hasn't made that necessarily available to us yet. So, are there any questions on that? Yeah.
Our STEM students already have a DreamSpark account for free. Can we deploy this? Will they see both options, or will it be two separate accounts?
We can do them however you'd like. I suggest an integrated storefront for sure. In fact, I think that's what Oxford's done. If we were still signed in here. If both offerings are available to all of your students, or in the case of DreamSpark, the STEM students, and we're able to distinguish between your STEM students and your general population, which we can do so long as the information coming to us is good, we can definitely present both options in a simultaneous experience. And they could add, a free copy of Windows through DreamSpark and a free copy of Office through Student Advantage into the same shopping cart, get a download and a key for Windows, and get provision for Office 365 Pro Plus through the other method. So we see a DreamSpark tab here. If we click on it, we should see some products. Looks like this is DreamSpark Standard, not Premium. So there's things like Visual Studio, for example, here. We can go through. If you have things like the work-at-home program or work-at-home rights or home use rights, which you all will have with these OVSES or EES agreements, you're eligible for that by default if you have the same Student Advantage rights, then that can also be added here. And we know when a faculty member signs in from when a student signs in, and we'll present them with the correct experience based on their eligibility. Clemson has Adobe and Adobe ETLA. Same thing can happen here. So this isn't an ETLA. This looks like the old ELA downloads. But in the case of the ETLA Creative Cloud, we manage that program for Adobe entirely. If you sign up for that, you will have a Cavuto storefront that does the distribution. So I use the word storefront loosely, even though the vast majority of the stuff that we distribute is at no cost. So really, our service is taking the hassle out of the deployment. That's what we do a little bit differently. We're not saying it's the best way of doing it. We're saying it's an alternative way of doing it. If you want to do a full-blown Office 365 deployment, if that's in your roadmap and that's your plan, you should actually do that. You should absolutely do that. What we've developed is a service that's a stopgap, essentially, to enable you to offer this specific benefit until you make that move. Because what we've seen is there's just a ton of schools out there that are leaning towards that method, but they're not quite ready to do the full-blown Office 365 integration for like Lync and SharePoint and Exchange and all of those other services that really need to be there. And we're doing that through the deployment of this platform. That's a one-stop, let's call it a shop, for everything that a student could be entitled for. So that's really all that I had today. Are there any questions? Yeah.
You had the $9.95. Is that one flat fee, or because it's subscription-based every time you re-authenticate it?
Yeah, well, the way that it is set up is to do that. We can set it up if you change it from 12 months to like if it's every 3 months that you want, the system's smart enough to do that, the next additional 3 months for free, for example. But we've set it up sort of as an annual fee in both the campus model and the student model. Yeah. So it's an annuity program, much like your EES or your OVSCS. Yeah. Yeah.
We already have Office 365 for our students.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got this as part of our agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And we're small, we're only 12
Mm-hmm.
students. But I'm still interested in the support side.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a very small team, so the idea of getting all the students only wanting support like this, that's what scares me.
Right.
I think the
Right.
for support business. So how does Kavuto help?
Sure. So all of the help desk would be directed to basically our internal support team. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we're about 80 people in Ottawa. We offer multilingual support worldwide, actually, for all the different programs that we manage. So a user would, they would click that FAQ or that help tab on the web store. And we have some help topics for them. If there's anything that they need additional help with, they're welcome to email or phone us. We offer toll-free phone as well as full email support. Email is a 2-day SLA. Phone is obviously instantaneous when we're open, which is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday to Friday. But we will help that student. We will get them through. If there were any issues on the provisioning side, any issues on the account side, any issues with clicking the Install Office button, we'll help them through. In practice, there's actually not a lot of support that comes out of that, out of this, because of the way that the software is delivered. But when it does come in, it's because there's usually some type of a major conflict on their machine. So we'll do our best to help them through that for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The bulk import of user accounts work. I think the last time we had a discussion, we were told that all the students have to have the same domain for the email accounts that we will both import. Our students don't have institution-provided email because they didn't want it. They're coming in with their own Yahoo, Gmail,
Right.
whatever. They have, hundreds of different providers.
Yeah, so what we would do is we would actually import them into our platform rather than into the tenant. So you would give us a list of unique identifiers. If you already knew their Yahoo or Gmail email addresses, we could use those, or we could just use a student number. And then the student, when they come to register in ELMS, would actually be presented to enter that, let's say, unique identifier. If it matches, we'll send them an email, and we'll take them through the registration process and put them in the right account. And then from there, it's our system taking that information and creating the user and the tenant, so there would be no issue. Yeah. Right. I'm a little bit early. So yeah, if there's any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time today. And if you want to get a hold of us, Rick and I are, this is Rick White, he's our COO. We're both here and available to talk. Otherwise, we've got a website. It's just kavuto.com/office365, where there's a video and some other background information that goes into a little bit more detail about it, or you can send us an email and we'd be happy to take you through it. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.